Hi everyone, welcome to Off the Podium. I have Vahagni, guitarist, with me here in Los Angeles, and it's the first time I have a podcast where I'm not based out of Seattle, so it's an interesting thing. Hopefully everything works out. Vahagni, welcome.
Thanks for having me, man.
So let's start with the toughest question. Why the guitar?
Actually, that's the easiest question. That's the easiest question because it wasn't a choice. I didn't really choose to play the guitar or play music for that matter. My father was a professional guitarist, so it was pretty much like a mandatory thing, you know? Yeah. And I just picked it up when I was a kid, but around like 9 is when I really started to be, you know, given like strict lessons and expect results and stuff like that.
So you lived in the Soviet Armenia for a couple of years and then moved to the States. Were you already playing music when you were in Armenia?
Well, I lived in Armenia until 1991. I was about 6.5 when we moved to LA. I wasn't playing guitar. I mean, I've always had little guitars, you know, the kid-sized guitars and stuff like that. But there was never any real like, you know, a lesson being given and stuff. That was just me messing around with it. But I would sing a lot, actually. My mom was very keen about like just teaching me a lot of folk music, you know. So music, I mean, just started from birth, like literally.
Most people don't know, and I don't know if you want to get into it, but you also have your dad is obviously a well-known guitarist, was a well-known guitarist and a teacher, but you also, your mom's side of the family, there's another famous person from your mom's side of the family. Is that true?
Yeah, my uncle.
Yeah.
My uncle, Artur Shanazarian. Yeah. He's an ethnomusicologist and a komitasage composer, and he's a pretty smart guy.
Yeah, he's a very smart guy. And I remember Lark Musical Society years ago did this lecture series with him talking about komitas. And I lived in LA at the time, so I went to every single one of them. Yeah. And I was so impressed and amazed that someone knows so much and detailed about everything about komitas and ethnomusicology and Armenian musicology.
Yeah, man.
It was impressive.
He dedicated like literally his whole life to that. Yeah. I mean, literally. Like he was... in the archives like for like 15 years. Like you wouldn't come out of that place. You know what I mean? So he's researched everything. And he's done, you know, the actual work when it comes down to anthropology and things like that. And he's very, very smart when it comes down to just music as well, because he has, you know, he's a composer. He knows theory very well. He has degrees in that stuff. So kind of intimidating.
Yeah, well, to make it a bit more fun, how about an experience, a musical experience, whether it was your solo projects or your own projects or collaborations with other people where things kind of fell apart or something happened? Any interesting things that have happened on stage, off stage?
Oh man, yes, so many. So many. I mean, you know, everything from just I mean, I played in a lot of jazz clubs and jazz settings when I was younger, because that was pretty much the only place I could get work, you know, in LA. Those were the settings where there was most reoccurring nights of music in a sense, you know. Otherwise you would have to book a concert, and you're not going to book a concert in LA every week. You know, people are just not that interested. And, you know, from playing those clubs, you know, obviously it's many times where musicians get a little too drunk and, you know, things don't happen as well as they should on stage, and to the point where there's people falling all over the place and stuff like that, you know. And then also, I mean, one for me that's like constant is just it's sound. When you get to sound check, it's just everything always falls apart. You know what I mean?
But that's a good thing, because if things fall apart at the sound check, that means it might actually be great.
Well, I mean, not necessarily musically, but just like sonically. You know what I mean? Because of the line of work, like the acoustic guitar, flamenco guitar, classical guitar, when you mix it with, you know, bass and percussion and other instruments, you need to know how to mic it and you need to know how to amplify it. Otherwise it sounds really bad. You know? And there's a certain way you need to do it where it actually projects enough so it's not buried under everything else. You know? And most people aren't very versed in that, because they're used to miking steel string or electric guitars and miking the amp and stuff like that, you know. So that's normally where things fall apart the most. But, you know, then we just work through it and people start yelling at each other until it comes together.
Interesting thing about the guitar, it's one of the most versatile instruments, obviously. There's electric guitars and flamenco and classical. So for those who don't know, and I'm not very well versed other than listening to your music and maybe some other artists, but what is the difference between a flamenco guitarist and a classical guitarist, for example? What some basic things that maybe the listener would try to take away? Or
well, I mean, for one, classical, when you say classical guitar, it's the way of playing and the repertoire, right? So when you say flamenco, it's a cultural thing, so what they're expressing is not an interpretation of Bach, or Giuliani or whatever. It's an interpretation of a cultural expression, and it's not necessarily folk music either. Most people have that misconception as well. Flamenco is Spanish folk music.
Oh, okay.
But it's actually not. It's Roma, it's what they call Romani, like gypsy music.
Interesting.
Okay. It's the gypsies that migrated, through so many different routes. Some of them went through Africa. Some of them went, around north, came into Bulgaria and places like that. So the ones that ended up settling in Andalusia, in Spain, the southern part of Spain, created this mixture of sounds, which is very much influenced by their own gypsy culture, the Moorish culture, which was there for like 800 years. There's some flamencoologists who claim that there's a lot of Sephardic and even Greek. So I mean, but mainly it's the Spanish music that kind of existed, that got intertwined with the gypsy culture, the gypsy way of playing music and expressing that, the Moorish influences, and over hundreds of years it kind of just became what we know today as flamenco. But it's also a very creative and it's an evolving, constantly evolving kind of art form. And in classical music, I mean, classical guitars don't have to be composers. They can interpret music for the rest of their lives. You know what I mean?
There's a lot written.
And I mean, they can arrange music, sure, for the guitar. But in flamenco, it's almost like a blues or jazz culture in a sense, where you have to create, you have to have your own works of music based on that cultural style.
So the flamenco community, how do they approach or maybe appreciate everything that you do with the music? Because you do mix it up, and sometimes when it comes to like Armenian folk music or other types of music, when you do too much and you mix too much with it, there are certain groups that are like, oh well, he completely messed it up and did this. Bastardized. So how does that community approach everything that you're doing?
You know what? I'm pretty sure a lot of people hate what I'm doing, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people really like it. But the point is that I've been very careful to not present myself as a flamenco guitarist. I never present myself as a flamenco guitarist. I can't help what others write and say.
That's true.
But I don't present myself as a flamenco guitarist. And for that reason, because it gives me more freedom. I don't want to carry that flag. You know what I mean? And say this is what I represent, because that's responsibility. Now you have the responsibility not to bastardize that music. Whereas with me, because that's my base, it's kind of one of the most kind of fundamental parts of my musical journey, since a kid. Things are just going to come out that way, whether I like it or not. And also my technique and approach to the instrument is completely based on that. But I don't want to represent the flamenco culture. Not because I don't like it. I mean, I love it, but it's also because I respect it too much.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
I was just going to say that.
I have too much respect for it. I don't want to say, hey guys, this is flamenco and this is what you should know as traditional pure flamenco music, which is the music of the gypsies, of that culture. It's like I have the background and the ability to, but I wouldn't be honest to myself. Then I would just be like, okay, this is what I have to do, but part of me is always going to be interested, too interested in other things for me to just stay put and do this.
When kids they're growing up, they're taking on instruments. They take on a classical guitar, they take on a rock, electric guitar to play some rock music. especially in the States, you wouldn't meet too many kids who are like, yeah, I want to be a flamenco guitarist. How did that come about? And I know from what I've read somewhere online, I think it might have even been your website, your dad was opposed to you learning flamenco.
Well, no,
at least early on, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, my father was a classical guitarist, but if he had a choice, he would have been a flamenco guitarist.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. He was like one of the biggest flamenco enthusiasts, you know, and I don't know, I really don't know. I mean, he's Armenian. He had never been in Spain or had any relationship with that culture. But for some reason, something about that music really captivated him in this way where it was just like he was obsessed with it, you know, and especially the way it translated to the guitar. You know, flamenco music, Spanish classical repertoire, you know, Albanese or De Falla, and that stuff just sings on the guitar, you know. So, but he was like, you're definitely going to just start out classical repertoire. You're going to learn how to read music. You're going to learn how to, you know, play all the etudes and all this stuff. And then I was about 9 when that started, you know, played everything from, you know, all the Sor, the Giuliani, the blah, 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 the beginning stages of classical guitar repertoire. By the time I got to like, you know, intermediate, like getting into Tarrega and more Bach repertoire and stuff like this and Albanese, I think it came to a point where I was literally like suffocating him, asking him every day, like, can we go to flamenco now? Can we go to flamenco now? You know what I mean? So at about 12, maybe.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, he said, okay, fine.
Leading to the next part of your life, how was the experience in Spain?
It was life-changing, definitely, because, you know, everything I thought I knew about flamenco, I realized there were a lot of misconceptions. When you live there and you spend time with the actual flamenco musicians and kind of participate in that culture, start to realize what's real and what's not. You know, so that was very good for me because it opened my eyes, you know, to the music that I was learning, you know, and I was trying to become good at, you know. But it was literally, it was just practicing, taking lessons 3 times a week. I would take lessons probably almost once a week. I would go to the peñas, which is these like little flamenco underground like clubs, like where aficionados go, mainly like old grandpas who are very
smoking
bitter.
Cigars,
eating jamon serrano and drinking wine and singing all the like old, really traditional, no nonsense flamenco letras that they call it, you know. And they don't take, I mean, like they'll take the guitar from you literally and kick you out, you know what I mean? No modern stuff, don't get creative, you know, it's just like no nonsense. So I would go there to learn how to accompaniment, you know, like the singing and learn about the singing, because that's probably like the most, that's the soul of flamenco in a sense. You know what I mean? Is the cante, as they call it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I would just literally practice, do that, go to my lessons, and then go to tablaos, like, which are the flamenco clubs where you actually go and watch, you know, like a jazz club or whatever, you know. So I was completely ensconced in it. Like, it's all I did. You know, and after a while it got a little bit, I would say, lonely too, you know, because I mean I literally just picked up and moved. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't know the language. I had nowhere to stay. You know what I mean? It was just like, now we're going to Spain.
But those are the experiences that really shape you and force you to do things out of your comfort zone, which makes something that you've come to do, which is a fusion of so many different things. And it's a great thing, because I think the people who are well versed in so many ideas, those are the people who are really able to bring something just completely unique to the table. Right. Because maybe you'll be too humble to say this, but how many people do what you do? Mix all the different things that you do with the music.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's all about finding your voice and then also having something to say. Yeah. And sometimes you go on this really long and obscure journey to achieve that. You know what I mean? Some people get it, like they know from the get-go. They know exactly what they want to do, how they want to do it. And they're like these prodigies, you know, by the time they're 15, they've already, you know what I mean? And then there's some people who just need a little bit more time to explore. And I always bring up the example of, like, you know, Beethoven and Mozart and their work ethics. Yeah. It's like, One just wrote.
Yeah.
The other one made like I don't know how many edits and edits and edits and edits. At the end of the day, it's the result that matters. Not how you get there. So, yeah, I think just taking your time and having the courage to be the underdog.
Yeah.
Constantly put yourself in situations where you are the worst at it and not the best at it. Is really
That's where you learn the most.
Yeah, exactly.
Some inspirational figures. I'm sure you'll mention your dad, but other inspirational figures that really helped you get to where you are.
So many, man. There's so many. My jar of inspirational figures are like endless because I just put everyone in there. But I would the first ones that come to mind are Paco de Lucia, who's God in flamenco guitar. Miles Davis, just because for what he stood for, and the music he made in his mind, obviously, I mean, you take the creators like Bach or Stravinsky, you know what I mean, Picasso, Dali, I've always been drawn to people who were outside of the box. I just always felt like that's the only way things happen. Like, you have to be outside of the box. When you're inside of the box, you're just repeating. So those probably are always the figures who inspired me the most, were the people who probably took the biggest risks. Yeah.
I saw another name on your bio. And I was an assistant to, when I was conducting with an orchestra, I didn't conduct a concert, but Bill Frisell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah.
And he happens to be from Seattle, too.
Yeah, Bill's definitely one of my favorite guitarists. I just, there's something about the way he plays that just, it evokes like some sort of spirit I can't define. It's something that's really pure. He has this purity. He has just this honest, pure, gem-like expression. You know what I mean? And it's so, just, there's no ego in his playing. It's not pretentious. It's just really honest expression. He's not one of those guys who are gonna sit there and shred and show off and tell you how good his technique is, even though he can. But it's like going back to that saying where you can play 1,000 notes and say nothing. You can play one note and say everything, in a sense. And he's definitely one of those guys.
And that's what I liked about some of your tracks, is because it has a space that I don't feel from certain other musicians who might do similar styles, is you give that space to breathe, and I remember watching one of them, I can't remember the name, but there was a dancer as well, and there was that space where it was not about you, it was about just the space that you gave to the dancer and to the music, just to kind of let it breathe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think space is the, it's the upbeat. It's the counter. Like it's like light and dark. You have to feel the space in order to make sense of everything else, because they kind of correlate. You know what I mean? The space makes the music. The music doesn't make the space, in a sense. So for me, especially with the with the nylon string, like classical guitar, it's not the loudest instrument in the world. When you pluck a string, you have seconds. In a sense. So finding a way to make it kind of be elastic, is the only, in my opinion, at least, it's the only way you can really do that, is giving it space rather than more notes. And that way you can get this elasticity out of it that the voice has. And I think at the end of the day, with instruments, it's just like trying to get as close to the voice as you can of that expression, So
jumping ahead, I know you do a lot of collaborative projects with various artists. You have a duo project currently, and you also have your own solo stuff, band and other things. Something that is upcoming, a new project that you want to talk about?
Oh man, well, I just released a couple of EPs.
Okay.
One was called Fragments, which is basically based on a style of flamenco music called the bulerías, which is in 12/8. It has a very, very specific and strict kind of like rhythmic structure, and it also has a characteristic kind of approach. You know, like you have to make it sound like a bulerías as well in a sense, and it's one of the most popular forms in flamenco. And so I wanted to do like this experimental thing where I took that form and tried to deconstruct it and keep as much of the bulería intact, but see how far I can go as far as subdividing and creating different kind of harmonic situations and things like that. And it was also very like groove based, rhythmic based. And I recorded that just duo with me and a percussionist, Diego Alvarez, who's phenomenal, one of the best in flamenco. And then I did another one which was completely different, which is all kind of like post-produced by me. I played everything and just, you know, did a lot of electronica stuff on it. And that was an album dedicated to my dad. It's called The Life and Death of a Great Matador. And I kind of chose that concept to portray life in a sense. And the title track is a seguirillas, another form in flamenco, which is more what they call a hondo, which is like a very, very kind of like the blues. It's not necessarily happy subject matter. You know, it's more about loss or longing and persecution, things like that, you know. But also talking about bastardizing it, it's like, you know, I got very experimental with it. And the first part is just me with a lot of post-production, and then the second half of it is just 4-part duduk, played by Noray Kartasyan, that I kind of just arranged some voices around with his duduks in post, you know, editing, and then had him take like this nice little solo, which later I laid on top, and I stripped away all my guitars, and there's just this like kind of like sub bass haunting little electronica thing going on in the back. So yeah, that album, I mean, that EP was completely different. And now I'm going to release another EP called Blue Dream. And that has a couple of collaborations on it as well. I did an arrangement of a Sayat Nova piece that Tigran Arakelyan played on from Madrid. He's a great violinist. And then I had another piece, it's kind of very slow, based on another flamenco form that is just guitar and strings, which Arturo Manukyan played on the cellos. Then after that, I'm recording a full-length album, which is just solo guitar, called Portraits and Poems. And I'm also working on a project that's like very, very important to me right now, called Paco Versailles. And that's a project that I started with Ryan Merchant from Capital Cities. And we basically just took like the idea of French kind of leaning electronica, EDM type of music, like Daft Punk and stuff like that, and trying combining it with flamenco guitars and rhythms and things like that, right? But keeping it completely pop. You know, it's just really feel good, kind of dance vibe music. And you know, it's something I've always wanted to do, because I always wanted to give like the nylon guitar that place. You know what I mean? Because every time people think of nylon guitar, they either think of classical music or something else. It's like, I just feel like the warmth it has and the rhythmic approach of flamenco music, you know, and guitar playing can really fit in with pretty much mainstream genres, you know. So I'm really excited about this
what project. Do you do to be in the right mindset to do the different genres? Because it must be tough in some ways. For me as a conductor, when I'm conducting like a pops concert, it's different from when I'm doing more of a masterwork series with a Beethoven symphony or something. You kind of have to get in the right mindset to... For me, I talk a lot with the audience during the performances, so it's about just knowing what to say and just kind of being in the right mindset for that type of music. How I mean, is it just pretty easy for you to flow into that next thing, or does it take time?
You know what? I think growing up, I always had like I'm a visual person. So for me, it's like I kind of just go there. I kind of get into that space. Almost like method acting, maybe. My mother actually is an actress. She's a professional actress in Armenia from the theater. I also grew up around theater, basically. She would take me to all the rehearsals and stuff, and I would destroy their sets as a kid. But I think having that approach helps, because it's the same thing with acting, right? It's like all those characters can live within you. You just have to kind of know how to get there and bring them out. So it kind of works the same way with music sometimes. It's I think it's just a different feeling, a different way of kind of feeling about yourself and what you're doing. And also, like, I love the culinary arts. So I always try to find that connection, you know, and that's what I love about really great chefs is they can cook all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? And it's just about executing at that point, having knowledge.
They're composers too.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just knowledge and knowing how to kind of execute what you're trying to do, you know. The rest of it is psychological, I think.
Advice to young musicians.
Oof. Man, I like to consider myself a young musician. I don't know.
The ones that are coming up, you've at this point built a career. The ones that are kind of trying to put it together, because you know it's really tough out there in the music world. It's to put a career together. All these young musicians, they're kind of struggling with how am I going to do it and all this stuff.
Right.
Advice, maybe.
Look, man, you either have to be really, really experienced or like really, really wise to give really definitive and concrete advice, which I'm neither. But like you have to be like, I don't know, maybe have done something for like 70 years and you know, but the one thing I know for a fact that I can be really confident in, you know, giving advice is everything else, like about career, when it comes down to, you know, promote yourself and, I don't know, get an Instagram page and be more active and do this and do that. I can honestly say all that is bullshit. I think at the end of the day, the harder you work, the more time you put into your craft, the better you're going to be. And you have to get to a point where it's undeniable. If you can get to that point, you don't have to do any of the other stuff. You bypass all that stuff. So if you can truly become the best that you're capable of becoming, putting in that work, everything else kind of falls into place. You know, it's the people who, and I've been there, you know, where you start panicking and you're like, what do I got to do? I got to do this. I got to be more social. I got to, you know, network more, and I got to, you know, record more, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that to me always seems like you're half-assing the real job, which is spend that energy getting better at what you do.
Exactly.
You know? Once you do that, I've always thought about that. Like if let's say some guy, you know, that you've never seen in your life, never heard of, has been locked away on some island, right? Practicing like 18 hours a day, right? All of a sudden we go pick him up, we bring him here, put him in a room, and just put some cameras on him, and he plays like the craziest shit you've ever seen in your life. You know what I mean? It'll just take that one video. You know what I mean?
Because he's ready to have that
because
spotlight.
the work he's put in, you know, has brought him to that point where it's like, I'm here. It's
just crazy. We live in a world where Instagram and Facebook, all the social media, everyone's trying to be something. And
well, man, it's you have to understand the game. It's a game. It's a game of people making money, and we're like cattle. It's like, sure, you're special. You know, believe that you're special. Here's a tool where you can, you know, start letting everybody else know that you're special. And then the more other people agree with you, the happier you are. And the more they don't give you attention, all of a sudden, you know, you're sad and depressed and I don't know. It's just, it's a little bit childish, to be honest with you. Like, especially when I see like really serious musicians caught up in stuff like that. It's a popularity contest. Really, that's all it is. And I'm guilty of it too. I mean, we all have to do it these days because how else are you going to get your information out? You know what I mean?
That's true.
Well, nobody reads the paper. You know, nobody listens to the radio. So you have to do it, but at the same time, you just have to kind of be smart about knowing what you're doing and how it's affecting you. You know, like put your energy into your work. This should just be a very kind of robotic, you know, thing that, okay, here, you know, I did my due diligence. Like, but I feel like if you put all that work, all that energy, all that thinking into what you're actually doing, like playing the guitar or composing music or whatever it is, man, think about it. I mean, think about how much progress you can make.
What does Vahagni do when not playing music?
Oh man, I'm with my kids. I'm with my kids a lot. They're still young, you know. My son's gonna be 2 in January. My daughter's 3. So everybody always told me enjoy that time.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm trying to as much as I can. I love to cook. I love to cook. I think if I wasn't a musician, I wouldn't mind being a chef.
You answered my next question.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I really wouldn't. I mean, I love the creative process.
Yeah.
I think it's an art, definitely an art, just like anything else. The only cooler aspect of it is you can actually eat it.
Yeah.
So it's visual, but at the same time, like, you can taste it.
Yeah.
You know. So I love to cook. I love to watch documentaries, and you know, I'm always trying to learn about something new. So I'm either reading something online or watching a documentary or doing some sort of weird research.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't sit still. I'm not one of those people who can lounge. I don't know how to lounge.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
The guitars. How much does a great guitar matter in what you do? Can you do some impressive, everything that you're doing, can you do it on an okay guitar that's a cheap guitar? And what kind of guitars do you have? Just a bit about guitars.
Yeah, man, that's a good question. You know, some people are very, very, very like nitpicky about what kind of instrument they play, what kind of strings they use, and all these, you know, fine-tuned kind of expectations from their instrument. From a young age, I was never like that. I was just like, give me a guitar and I'll play it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I played on everything. I had all kinds of guitars growing up. My dad was like a fanatic. He was just constantly buying guitars, you know. So I had everything, all the best guitars you can think of. I mean, they weren't mine, they were my father's, but that's what I was playing. I was playing his instruments, you know. I do think, though, that there is something really important about not how expensive it is or what, you know, who made it, blah blah blah. There's a lot of name makers who produce crappy instruments, and there's a lot of makers who you never heard of that produce instruments that are just like, where did this come from? You know. But I think it's just about finding the one that's like perfect for you. I haven't found mine, you know, not yet. And that's maybe why I'm not so picky. It's because I haven't found mine. So I just play whatever feels most comfortable, you know. But I've had a bunch of Hermanos Conde guitars, which are the ones that Paco de Lucia made very famous. The ones from Spain. I've played Andres Dominguez guitars from Sevilla. You know, growing up, I had a bunch of like those almost real handmade, but not quite kind of, you know, Raimundos or whatever. Now I play local. There's a local luthier, Herman Vasquez Rubio. He's here in LA. He makes really fantastic guitars. And part of me also feels like it's good to support, you know, local builders. But yeah, I'm still on the hunt. You know, I'm still searching for my woman, as they call it, you know, because it becomes your woman, you know. It's it's like a marriage, you know. Once you find it, you find it. It's like, you know, but it'll take time probably.
Anything you want to add that we missed? Any projects? Anything that you?
No, man. I mean, you know what? I'm always making music and putting stuff out, hoping that, you know, one day it'll have its time, and I just kind of move on. You know what I mean?
Well, I think a lot of what you do has it's in the moment. I mean, you have a following. People like listening to what you produce, and sometimes with the type of quality of music that you produce, sometimes it doesn't have the millions and billions of followers, because it's actually great quality. So
thank you, man.
You should be happy about that.
Yeah, I'm not. You know what? I when I was younger, I was very, what's the word? Like, I was very motivated for success and stuff. You know what I mean? Eager. Yeah. Now I've kind of calmed down a little bit, you know.
Because you have it already. I mean,
not great. Necessarily I have it. It's just like I kind of feel like all I can do is just make music. That's all I can do, and do my best at it. Everything else, I'd just rather not have too much control over that, because you go crazy. You know what I mean? I just want to concentrate on making music. It's easy these days. You can just release as much music as you want digitally. You know what I mean? And it's there for people. If they want to listen to it, they can listen to it. You know, that's all I can do. You know?
And sometimes, you know, with Bach and some of the other composers, it takes time. Sometimes people need that time to digest it. And for example, with classical music, for decades now, people have said classical music is dying. But the thing I've realized about classical music, it's like fine wine. You're not gonna get 20-year-olds who are just gonna drink fine wine or fine whiskey. So it takes time for people to get to that point. So
well, and also, I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with you putting out music and people not losing their shit over it immediately. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean it was bad.
Yeah.
You know? That's the thing, I think, like, psychologically, some people are kind of, they're screwed up these days, you know, with all this media stuff. Like, they release something and they expect something. Yeah. And when they don't get it, they look at it as a failure. Yeah. You know?
But so there's so many factors into that being a success. And sometimes it's the producers, sometimes the connections, all these different things.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can, and also talking about giving people time. Yeah. Now that's even more like an inevitable thing because the saturation. Yeah. There's just so much music these people have to get through. You know what I mean? And by the time they listen to yours, you know, imagine. And then they have to listen again and again and again to really understand it and to really like it. So all that takes time. And look, there's nothing wrong with just putting out music and moving on to the next thing. You know, that's what we do. We're musicians.
Yeah, and again, with classical music, I'm sure it's the same in other places too. It's that first 15-20 seconds for some reason. People are so much about just a quick little glimpse into what's happening. And it's crazy because the person, I won't say the name, he judges international music competitions, and he told me, he's like, it's gotten to the point where I've realized this is happening to me. He's like, I would seriously turn on a video of someone who's applying to be in this big competition. We only invite 15 people. And I listen to the first 30 seconds and I'm like, okay, I've had enough. I don't think there's a person that I'm going to invite. Right. It's gotten that crazy. Right. He's like, I've been catching myself doing that. It's really crazy.
But why do you think that is? I mean, do you think that's because there's just too much to pay attention to now and we don't have the time to give to everything, you know? Or is it because we've trained ourselves?
I think we've trained ourselves.
Yeah, right? Yeah. That's what I think
and too. Especially with Instagram, you're constantly going, you know, even the 1 minute videos, you don't want to take the time to watch a 1 minute video. It's crazy.
No, man, my wife yesterday showed me this thing on your phone where you can actually go in and see like how much you're using it. It tells you by the hours. Oh, wow. And it's telling you what you're spending most of your time on. Uh-huh. And when I saw mine, I was disgusted. I was like, really? Yeah. I could have been practicing. You know?
Crazy world we live in. Yeah. We got to do another one of these, man.
Yeah, man. It's been great. Anytime. I'll come up to Seattle next
Please
time.
do. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll collaborate on something at some point.
I would love to, man. I mean, I'm really a big fan of guitar and strings. Yeah. So I definitely want to make something like that happen soon.
We could make it happen.
Let's do it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, man.
Take care.
All right, brother.